I'm delighted to be joined by a Grammy-nominated artist with #1 single around the world, 10 million plus album sales, and has written songs for so many major Hollywood movies too. And that's not forgetting winning Crufts as well. It's my pleasure to welcome to Vintage Rock Pod the naughty, Mr. John Parr.
Good morning. How you doing? Or is
I'm
it good evening?
Well, it could be wherever at this point. Absolutely pleasure to speak to you again, John. Now, I've got to
Great to
mention just
speak to you,
quickly
Paul.
there, Crufts. What was the story? That's not very rock and roll, but fantastic to win nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I guess it wasn't with an Afghan; it was with a German Shepherd, so it is a bit of rock and roll, I suppose. Yeah, we won. We won Best German Shepherd Male. That's a long time ago. Well researched, man. That's a long time ago. But yeah, that's a dog called Mr. President. Yeah, and we bred German Shepherds, and we were really into the breed for many years. But obviously, as time got more constrained and the kids came along, the dogs took a back seat.
Indeed. We know that feeling well. So it's a difficult place to start with you because you've got such a long career. You've got such a wide-ranging career as well. So what I'm going to do
I'm
is...
old, that's why.
Well, I didn't like to say that, and I'll leave that to you. But
Show
what
them
I'm
a
going to
picture
start
though, it
with
don't look
is...
bad.
No, not at all. Definitely not. We'll start with the iconic image of you with the Gibson, the Stars and Stripes. Where did that come from? Because you've had that for a very long time, haven't you?
I've had that since 71.
Wow.
Turned professional when I was 19. Played a residency in Guernsey. Really heavy shows, 13 shows a week. But I didn't drink anything that whole 6 months, saved the money, and then went down to Surrey Sound and bought the Les Paul Deluxe. And my buddy used to make motorbike fairings for the Grand Prix motorbike guys out of fiberglass. And he said, I'd like to make you this special mask that goes on the front of that guitar. And we put that on in 71, and it's been on, and it's still on. Yeah.
That's incredible, isn't it? Especially the Stars and Stripes, because your major success originally came in America, didn't it? I mean, before we jump that far, though, you were in successful bands, you were touring, you did Europe, that sort of stuff. But your really big break came, didn't it, when you used to send out cassettes and try and get a bit of work, songwriting, that sort of stuff. And you got a call from what can only be described as a global superstar.
From David or from Meat Loaf, I suppose. From Meat Loaf was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I signed this little, I probably told you last time, I signed this little publishing contract in 83. I was working in this little 8-track studio, and of course it was cassettes then and 1-inch tape, and 500 quid they signed me up for. Lawyer was 400, train was 50 quid, so I made 50 quid at the deal. But within a year, they used to give me £100 to make each demo, so I could afford to pay musicians. Sent stuff out, got interest from Rod Stewart and from Diana Ross, but the call, the first bite was Meat Loaf, and that kind of changed everything.
And you spoke, I spoke to you before previously in my radio days, and you said that within a week of getting this call off Meat Loaf, you were over there in, was it Connecticut with his family, and it all just kind of snowballed from there.
Snowballed there. And it's funny, I just seen Bruce Springsteen's new video, and a lot of those faces were in that same studio, a bit younger then, with Meat Loaf, because they kind of shared musicians. And it was really weird for me because I was like, a Yorkshire, a northern musician that had been in 8-track studios. Suddenly I'm in a world-class studio with world-class musicians. Within a couple of days, they're going, what do you think of this, John? You think I should do that? I was really welcome. But I was ready, I was kind of case hardened from all the years on the clubs,
Good stuff. Now, how did you find working with Meat Loaf then? Because obviously his reputation is of, I don't know, a fearsome man probably, or a difficult man at times. And you obviously forged a really good relationship with him.
Yeah, he's like, people say, watch it, bite your leg or he'll throw a piano lid at you, But no, he and I, we met at Newcastle City Hall. He was doing a tour there, and that's when I gave him the cassette. And we just hit it off. But of course, the songs, as I'd said before to you, the songs that I gave him, I was singing like him. Mm-hmm. So it was like his own records he was listening to. He loved it. And he'd split with Jim once again and was looking for a new writer. And I think he saw me as, the White Hope, Great White Hope.
Fantastic. And just skipping forward a few years, you two actually performed and recorded a duet together, didn't you? Rock and Roll Mercenaries, which was a big hit as well, wasn't it?
Do you know, it's funny, I saw a link on it. I clicked on it yesterday because, you know, links come through on Google, and it said, oh, rock and roll mercy. And I put it up, and I forgot. It's a stunning video shot with the late, great Terry Donovan, who's like a photographer. He was the guy who did Addicted to Love for Robert Palmer with those beautiful girls. And some of those girls are in that you watched in that video. But yeah, it was a great record. Recorded that with Frank Farian over in Germany.
And I was going to say, you talk about the video there. I mean, Meatloaf's eyes in that video, he's looking fearsome again, using that word again for him, but he just looked like he was ready to tear, wasn't he? He was ready to go.
Yeah, he wasn't. The thing is, he was in good shape, though. He wasn't, you know, I normally got very obese in the Bat Out of Hell days. So he's probably 3 or 4 stone lighter. And we did a lot of touring together with that record. So we were all over the world doing things. And I think that's how the friendship forged. But it's really weird. He's just, as we say in England, big boned. You know, he's not a big eater. He certainly doesn't drink. You know, so he's just a big Texan lad who was raised on steaks, I think.
That's not a bad way to be at all. So going back to your own singles then, the first one that cut through and went big was Naughty Naughty. Now tell us a little bit about behind that.
Well, while I was working with Meat Loaf, I got taken on with a guy called John Wolfe, who was the production manager for The Who. Keith had died, so I met him at a farewell party for The Who, and he said, do you mind if I start pitching your stuff? So while I'm at Meat Loaf, he calls me and he says, I'm with Atlantic. I'm with Ahmed Erdogan at Atlantic, and they really like your demos. They want you to come over to New York. I went to New York, met Ahmed Erdogan and Doug Morris, and they signed me and sent me down to Criteria Studios, where Eric Clapton had done 461 and Bee Gees were down there, and Stephen Stills was in the other studio. But Naughty Naughty wasn't written. We'd got 10 tracks, and we used to just warm up with this riff, Naughty Naughty, and it developed. And I started writing words to it. And Ahmed said to me, John, you got to write a song about sex. So I thought about it. And then Naughty Naughty was born. And of course, the other thing I wanted to do was to bring in all those weird sounds that sampling had just begun in that era. Digital was just surfacing. So JJ from The Art of Noise flew over. And without a Fairlight and discs, the Bee Gees lent us their machine, and we had to make all the sounds from scratch. So all those sounds you hear on Naughty Naughty was just me and JJ fooling around in the studio.
Incredible stuff. And you did a lot of touring, didn't you, with some big bands? You were touring with Toto as well at one point.
Toto was the first one. I mean, again, I probably told you on your radio show, you know, but it's a story worth telling for anybody out there that's struggling and losing hope. I mean, I can remember in 1983 putting Toto 4 on, and I cried. I just thought, man, I got no chance. I can't compete with this. Spool forward to 1985, and I'm on tour with them. They're in the wings watching me punching in the air. They played on my records. In fact, I played with Bobby Whitlock. We just shot a film, not Bobby Whitlock, Bobby Kimball from the original singer from Toto. We just did something together. And again, you couldn't write it, you know. So anybody out there thinking, you know, just do the work, believe, and measure yourself against the best. Forget everybody in between. Look at who you think's the best and put the gloves on.
Absolutely. And you talk about doing the work and hope and things like that. And that leads us nicely to St Elmo's Fire. And then a lot of people on the face of it originally kind of saw it as the soundtrack to obviously the movie that came with it. But the meaning behind the song was so much more, wasn't it?
Well, it was, you know, again, David Foster, the, you know, world famous record producer, he loved Naughty Naughty. And he called me and said, look, I'm doing this movie. Would you like to come over and write something for it? And I got there and he was exhausted. He really exhausted. And but I persuaded him just to give me, he wanted me to sing something already recorded. It wasn't great. I said, look, let's try and write something. And we wrote St Elmo's really, really quickly. But I was struggling with the words, and I'd looked at the script and I couldn't identify. I'm a working class lad from the north of England, secondary school, left at 15. These in the film, these are rich kids, silver spoon, worrying about how they're gonna, you know.
Yeah.
And it just didn't resonate with me. And the director, the late Joel Schumacher, came down, and I wasn't fired up. And then David showed me a video cassette of this young guy from his hometown, Vancouver, that had broken his back a year earlier. And he was literally setting out he wanted to wheel his wheelchair around the world to raise money for spinal research and awareness. There was no internet then. It was just a little story. And I watched this video and it changed my life. All my own struggles were reflected in this guy. You know, it's kind of it was the metaphor for my own struggle, really. And so I wrote this lyric about what I thought would happen, that he was going to go across deserts, across mountains, and but I had to make it so that the film company wouldn't go, what's this pair of wheels? So they thought it was Demi Moore's Jeep. For once in his time, a man has his life. They think that's when Emilio Estevez gets the girl. So I was careful but I'm amazed that they swallowed brackets Man in Motion. Then, because it was such a tight deadline, they never asked me why. And the rest was history, you know. I knew in that moment that it was something, we'd been gifted it. It came, as I think all great music comes out of the Keith Richards go. When somebody says, Keith, where does the music come from? He goes, I do that, you know, or I do that, you see. Yeah, you know, I don't take credit for it. I'm just the vessel for it. And, but I was prepared. And the rest, you know, we've raised 280 million Canadian dollars for spinal research now. He wheeled around the world. He's just been inducted into the Natural History Museum in Canada. We just did the big, it's just, you can't believe, you know, this little kid that dreamed, and the man that dreamed, and together and with David, we reached the stars.
Absolutely did indeed, and it became a global smash hit everywhere, didn't it? Everyone knows it. Everyone still knows it today. It's still played on the radio. It's just one of those lasting legacy type of songs.
There was 1 million people, Chinese people, when he wheeled across the Great Wall, and they were all singing St Elmo. It was weird. It was like bizarre, you know. And then when he wheeled back, when he wheeled out of Canada, there were 4 men and a dog waving him off in the rain. And when he wheeled back in, there was 1 million people lining the streets, and the brass bands in the street were da 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 da. It was just you couldn't write it. It was like they'd say, "We got to tone it down. It's too schmaltzy or whatever," but it's not. You know, it's true.
And schmaltzy, whatever. The song is just it is just a phenomenon, and one of the best performances of it. I mean, I urge anyone to go and check it out on YouTube. Is when you did at Royal Albert Hall, and when you sang this, it was so moving and emotional. It was lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, I do occasionally when I doubt myself, I will have a look at that because it's fairly near to me now. It's not too long ago. And I think it was a double thing. It was the first time at the Albert Hall for me. I did it with Richard Marx, and Richard had lost his father. I'd lost my father, and I knew we were both doing it for our dads. So if you watch me at the very end, I kind of go to my dad. My dad always said, you don't need these electric guitars and these Marshall amps. Just sit on a stool, tell a few stories and play your guitar. And I thought, crikey, Dad, you know, it's all gone full circle. I got a standing ovation and I'll never forget it. Yeah. You know, greatest thing, you know, I think for an artist, you know, when people stand, I love it, you know, and particularly when it's not my crowd. It was Richard's crowd, and they listened and they got it and made it all worthwhile. It just made it all, you know, because you know, you can imagine you get when you have something so big, you become this always a one-hit wonder, and everything else you do, it's almost like, and I carried that anchor dragging behind me for a long time. And because my career was mainly in America, nobody knew the rest of it. But now you realize even great actors are great, but they're known for, oh, you did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So there's always something to hang it. And I'm just lucky that I got one to hang it on, you know.
Absolutely, one indeed. Now, when you talk about songwriting and things like that, we'll move on to what you did with Roger Daltrey and the special song that you did for him, the tribute to Keith Moon, Under a Raging Moon. Now, how did all that come about?
Well, as I said, my manager for certainly those meteoric years was John Wolfe, who, you know, he started out as Keith's driver in the 60s. and he
Wow.
ended up being manager. And he was still with them when they bought Shepperton Studios, and it was a film studio, everything. So I think every Who story and every Moon story, I heard it from the horse's mouth on all those millions of miles we traveled.
Yeah, he'll have plenty of stories to tell as well.
Yeah, and so I just thought I want to write a real tribute to Keith and the Who, because they were so influential to so many people. I mean, they were a band that everybody was a frontman, weren't they? Everybody you looked at was just iconic. And so I was writing with a girl called Julia Downs. We wrote some strong songs together. Ironically, it was written on the piano. Okay. When you think, obviously the keyboard bit, but it's big guitars. But it's written on the piano, and just recorded it. And John sent it to Roger, and Roger just said, "Man, I love it," And I recorded it with him, sang backing vocals. Then he asked me would I do it at Madison Square Garden with him. So we did it as a duet at Madison. And it was, I mean, I was a little boy, used to get with my dad and watch Muhammad Ali, in black and white at Madison Square Garden. And again, pinch yourself, I'm there with Daltrey. Empress was on stage, Yoko Ono, John's, I don't think Julian was there, Sean was there. All these kind of iconic people. And, it was just special. And the song is really about Woodstock. It's like the helicopter coming down and all this crowd reaching up. And I tried to capture it, and I did. In fact, John Entwistle also recorded it. I don't know if you know that story. Yeah. John wanted to do it at Live Aid, and I guess we got to play Who songs. But what a thing to. You couldn't write it. It'd been funny old career. Funny old career.
Absolutely. And just talk about the drummers that were involved in that song as well, because when they heard that it was going to be a tribute to Keith.
Oh man, everybody, they all the kind of Copeland came down, Carl Palmer came down. A great story with Cozy Powell. I don't know if I've told you the one. Cozy had this great big kit. It was all mic'd up, and he just walked in, sat on the drum stool, put his foot on the bass drum, and he just kicked the kit all over. Just kicked it. And he went, I think Keith would have liked that. And that was Cozy's. But and we didn't ask. They kind of rang and said, look, we'd love to come and play, And that was just, I mean, I grew up listening to these guys' records, and like you say, I love drummers anyway. And Keith, of course, was it, wasn't it? Kind of, there was Bonham and there was Moon, two very diverse characters, but very difficult for a drummer to kind of shine. Mm-hmm. There's always great drummers like drummers, but these guys, your mums knows who Keith Moon is, that's iconic. When the man in the street knows, hey, that's Keith Moon.
Absolutely. And talking about things that your mums know, your mums know, you did a lot of stuff for movies as well. I touched on that in the intro, but how do you find writing songs for movies then?
I loved it. I mean, I used to go to the Saturday morning pictures when I was a little boy and watch all those kind of cliffhanger black and white Raiders and Flash Gordon and whatever. And I used to watch the credits and dream of it, And again, through David Foster, I did St Elmo's, and then the phone started to ring, and people realised very quickly that I was good at getting the emotion of what the director wanted. So I had a run. I think I did about 10 in a row of some big movies, and but it's a funny thing with movies. When you first do it, I was behind the scenes as well. You walk into the production meeting, there's a blackboard, big computer screen now, but it would be a hit list of all the artists that they wanted for the movie, regardless of whether they were great, what their songs were like. If they were in the charts, banging in, And I survived that because a lot of my stuff wasn't chart stuff. I kind of survived it just on the strength of being able to empathize. With me, if I remember watching a movie like The Running Man, for instance, one of the Zimmermans. If you look at many Hollywood movies, you'll see the Zimmerman family. And I can't remember which one it was, took me to the preview theatre. Just he and I showed me The Running Man. And I heard the song in my head straight away. And so I was scheduled to go over to Germany to write it with Harold Faltermeyer, who'd just done Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cops. I mean, I'd done one movie, and I hadn't heard. I thought Harold was like a disco. I know he'd done Donna Summer. I had no idea he was done these iconic movies. We got on like a house on fire. We recorded, and it was recorded digitally. 1985, unheard of. We recorded The Running Man digitally on a synclavier with 8 multi-tracks, digital multi-tracks, and there was one in the studio in LA as well. So they were able to just press go, and here it was like space age. And yeah, I can usually, if it's a good film and it moves me, I'm on my honor. I've got to deliver something that puts another horse on the team for the movie. And I think with Three Men and a Baby, I was in big company there again with Marvin Hamlish, Carabel Sager, and Dave Foster. We brought something to it. It was. Again, you can't figure it. Disney said, "Oh, this is a little movie. It's a remake of a French film. It's got TV actors in it. It's not going to be a big movie. So just write us a nice little song." And it was the biggest movie in Disney's history up until Pirates of the Caribbean. You just never know. I think if you put your heart and soul into it, you're on a prayer. You're halfway there.
Indeed, you are. You had a big gap in your career as well at one stage, didn't you? You had a little bit of trouble behind the scenes.
Yeah. Somebody in the team, I won't name him, but I put my trust in him. I loved him, and he wasn't right. And so come the 90s, I was, still clinging on to near the top of Everest. And I slid down very quickly because I was in a court case for 19 years. They just ran me ragged and ran a huge bill up. I couldn't get a major deal because there's always a little box that says, "Are you in litigation?" You tick that box, it's good night. You can't. But I had a little deal in Switzerland that put Man with a Vision album out. But they paid for the Under Parr album. But they spent all their money. They had no promotion. So I was just, I think they're very worthy records with some strong songs. But it looks like, a lot of people in their career fade. And, it's the natural thing, survival of the fittest. But it may sound egotistical, but I challenge anybody to look at any of those records and go, there ain't a couple of killers, and there. But you can't. And it got to the point where, even the rock was setting in. Atlantic Records didn't like me doing movies, so they wouldn't release Three Men and a Baby. They wouldn't release The Running Man, and they were huge movies, but and they wouldn't release the records, and they wanted me to just be this rock and roller. So that aligned to the court case. I just kind of, the beauty was, there's another thing for people listening out there, not just in music. Sometimes the worst thing that you think has happened to you can actually be a blessing. So I couldn't make music, but my wife and I, we had a few bob by then, and we thought we can start. We'd struggled all our lives. We coppered up, that phrase, to buy a loaf of bread. We literally, my wife paid the bills for so many years. And we started a family. And I saw my sons from babies to 18-year-olds, never missed a day out of their life. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't lost my career. So, you know what? I'll take my sons, I'll take my family. And now it's coming full circle. I'm still hungry and a few miles left in the tank. So, things are all right,
Yeah.
But, everybody's got a story with that court case. I bet anybody you interview will tell you a sad old story, and it's awful, but I think mine may just be the longest, 19 years, Couldn't work, and the debts I ran up, I had 1 point credit card debts of 150 grand. It was in those days. Can you remember when it used to come through the letterbox? It goes, borrow 10 grand interest free. And I was just teaming and ladling and then fortunately, right at the end, I was able to kind of pay it all off when I won. Man. But it made me ill, it took its toll,
Yeah. But talking about the positives of that again, you got to spend so much time with your family, and just speaking of your family, you got into martial arts, didn't you? And your sons, incredible.
Yeah. I mean, Crufts came out of it as well.
Yeah,
I'm a competitor, so I'm trying to be the best. I'm not, but I'm trying. I'm reaching. And with dogs, I thought, well, I want to breed the best. I want to, and we did win Crufts. And with martial arts, my sons got into it very early. My youngest was 4 years old when he started doing taekwondo. But we were blessed to have a great trainer in Doncaster, Kenny Walton. And I got the bug, and he said to me, John, you shouldn't be sitting at the back of the class. You should do it. I said, man, I'm 40, And so I did it. And man, I used to lift my legs out of the car because they were just dead. And I trained and trained. I became a black belt, second dan. I actually became a martial arts instructor. But I had such a bug with the kids I was on. One of those parents, a bit too keen. Yeah. But my eldest is 8 times world martial arts champion. My youngest is 1-time world champion. Wow. So we did it, and they did it under their steam. Dad and Kenny pushing. But again, it's just if you try and you just work. It's funny. My eldest, who's got the 8 world titles, not naturally gifted. He became the world's best and is incredible, but he didn't have it naturally. Whereas the young one could not train and beat everybody. If you've got kids, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? But yeah, I learned a lot with martial arts. I'd always been fascinated throughout my life, obviously with Bruce Lee and the mysteries of it. Mm-hmm. It does fascinate me. I like the ethos of it. I like the spirituality of it more actually than the combat of it, because people can learn it and use it for bad things, And yet when we were trained, it was 5 tenets: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. They're great tenets for life, And when I was teaching kids, I'd go, even like courtesy, it can stop a fight. It can stop a war. Courtesy, just that one. And integrity, I'd say to the kids, if somebody says, did he do that? Tell the truth, because then you've got your integrity. If you tell, without your integrity, you've nothing, have you? So, I learned a lot. I grew, and I did it for 20 years. So until I actually stopped when I won the court case, and then I thought time to get back on the horse and start making records and trying to, make a difference again.
Indeed, you did. You don't mess with John Parr, and you don't mess with the Military Man, and that kind of leads us nicely to the Mission, which was an album you brought out 2012. Very military inspired, and like I said, the Military Man is a fantastic track off that album. Tell us a little bit about that, getting back in the studio and recording that sort of stuff. Then,
well, my dad was in the military. My dad was in the Navy. He signed up. He was man and boy in the Navy. He sailed the world. He was in 7 years. There's something about the military, particularly English military as well. It moves me. If I watched, I'm not far off crying. It's that thing about putting it on the line when it's, and when I went to America in 1985, they were spitting on the military. There was still the remnants of the Vietnam War, and we just come out of the Falklands. So my career's going great. I'd meet lots of people, but over dinner they'd be going, oh, it's just jingoistic into the Falklands and all that. And I was so angry, because we know what we lost and what and the American soldiers were being told, don't wear your uniforms in the street because people don't like you. I went to one town, Raleigh, Durham, naval town in America, and it said in the 80s, no dogs on the grass or Navy in a park. That's how bad it was. And I'd always intended to kind of do a record to raise this awareness. And then I was doing all the movies. I kept saying, I'll do it next year, I'll do it. And then, of course, the career stopped. So when I got my career back, I thought, I'm going to go back to America. I'm going to make this record all about, it's going to be a rock and roll record in the way that St Elmo's, people don't know it's about a guy in a wheelchair. They don't know it's about disablement. They just think it's a great record, it's strong. I wanted that with a military record. And then you listen and think, wow, it's like, say, even with military now, this guy, it's about a guy at a bar, and he looks like he's got a bit of a belly, and he's having a drink, and they don't realize he casts a big shadow until they mess with the military man. The rest is history, And I think that so I tried to write a record that told the story of the father of a girl what else? The reason boys and girls enlisted. I mean, the weird thing about 9/11, the biggest take-up of American military was the day after 9/11. And 18, 19-year-old boys and girls that were dreaming about birds and guys and cars and, you know, spring break, dropped it and signed and went, you know, and I was so moved. I thought I was on my honor, so I wanted to make a tribute to them. But the difficulty was when I went back to America in 2012, I was out of step. The flags were flying, you know, the Stars and Stripes support our military. They loved their military then, and it was all changed. And I was kind of out of step. So I said there's me and my buddy Headley, lifelong buddy, we just got in a car and we did 35 miles in 7 weeks, just doing all the TVs. Because they'd take me in on the strength of St Elmo's, but once I got in, I'd go, I want to play this as well. So it was a trade-off. So I was able to do all the story of the military and then started doing it for the USO, which is kind of their help for heroes. And in the end, I did 18 months out there playing bases, hospitals, whatever. One of the greatest experiences, that just like St Elmo's, you know, it's like the other side of it. It's nothing more rewarding than, you know, people say, why do you devote yourself? Why? If they knew how I felt by doing it, I feel energized. You know, it's so honored, you know, and I loved it, you know, and yeah. So it didn't do what I wanted it to do, but it did to a lot of families and a lot of secret thing. The military, it did to the military. They all know. Even in the UK, when I do stuff for Help for Heroes and other regiments, I'm honoured to be part of the club.
Absolutely. Now let's move it to now then. You've been in the studio, you've been recording, and an old friend of the show as well, Kenny Jones, he's been helping you out on the drums as well. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the new record.
Well, I've been doing a few shows for Kenny because Kenny had prostate cancer and became a real spokesperson for it. And he runs Hurtwood down in Surrey. It's a polo club, and he would do big rock and roll events. Rod's played it, Who's played it, Jeff Beck, and I played along with them and done stuff like that. And then a mate of his, Mark Singer, said, "Look, you should make a record." Mark was a drummer. And I said, "Man, I don't know anymore." You know, he said, yeah, you've got a studio, do it. So I came up here in the studio with Mark. It was just me and a drummer. Wrote these. I'd have to write the songs in the morning, and then we'd record them in the afternoon. And then I just got to thinking about Kenny. I loved the Small Faces. Yeah. And I realized that he was the last man standing. You know, they've all gone. So I wrote a song with Kenny called Last Man Standing. And another song, which was about the Faces, called Sweeter the Second Time Around. Then he came up and played on it, just me and him. And then we made a movie of it. And again, pinch yourself, you know. I walk in, I go, "You ready?" I look and it's Kenny Jones. And, you know, I go right back to me at some festival as this wannabe, watching Kenny with the Faces and, you know, and he's my mate, you know, and sincerely my mate, you know. It's not just a guy that plays. We're just pals. He's a proper bloke, you know, and great drummer and a very wonderful human being, you know, that's really devoted his time to this terrible disease for men. You know, I mean, check yourself, guys, everybody. You know, just go to the doctors, get that blood test. It's called a PSA test. And just that's all it is. And it tells you whether you should be watching out. And, you know, half the guys get it. So music, again, can do this incredible thing.
Certainly can. In terms of the record itself, I mean, have you got a name for the album? Have you got a date for release or anything like that? How are you getting?
Well, there's a song on it called Back on the Loose, and it wasn't going to be the title of the album, but it's a real raunchy thing. And it's a funny thing, you know, a guy in his 60s being back on the loose, but I ain't, you know, you can see I'm this kid still. And so it's all about this guy just coming out of a relationship and picking up the gauntlet again and just, you know, causing havoc. And so it's a strong record, though. I say it myself. It's very like the first album I made, you know, kind of balls to the wall, you know, and sincere. A lot of guitars, a lot of couple of nice ballads on there, but and we, as I say, we made this film of the making of, and I'm so pleased we did. It's captured it, you know. So I have high hopes for it, but it's been so long in the making, and then with COVID, you know, it's just calmed us down.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, John. Thank you very much for joining us on Vintage Rock Pod. We wish you all the best for the record going forward.
Well, let's not make it 8 years next time.
No, not at all. Anytime you need,
I've
give us
loved
a
it.
shout.
God bless. Thank you, man.